Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hi, this is Nick Anastasiou, story editor on Star Wars The Clone Wars and Star Wars Bad Batch. And you are listening to Aggressive Negotiations.
Well, hello and welcome to Aggressive Negotiations, coming at you here from one of the monasteries on Teth. This place looks like it could use a cleaning after the battle that's happened here, but I'm just one of your hosts, Matthew Rushing, and with me, as he is every single week, is my esteemed colleague, nay, the Jedi of Jedis, John Mills.
You know, I actually think that what we should do instead of quote unquote cleaning up is we should sell these services as chaotic redecoration. When a battle happens at your monastery, it's the Jedi engaged in chaotic redecoration, and the Force is dictating where things should be laying around. Therefore, who are we to argue with the Force?
You know, I like that because it means more Corellian whiskey and less work.
There you go. See? There you go. See, that is the Jedi wisdom that you all tune in for right there.
Oh my gosh. Well, people can find us all over the place on social media. Please check us out on Twitter at The Jedi Masters. We got the entire network at Join Nerd Party. Of course, we're on Instagram at The Nerd Party. We're online at thenerdparty.com. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/The Nerd Party, where you can find all of the different shows that we're doing there. And of course, we would just love it if you would subscribe wherever you're listening to this. That means you'll get the show as soon as it drops. And of course, if you would like to help out the show, the best way for a podcast to grow is to tell people, hey, I like this podcast and you should listen to it. You can do that in person or you can do that digitally. So, share us with your friends if you like us. And the other way you can help us grow is by giving us star ratings and reviews on something like Apple Podcasts, where it's still one of the best ways to recommend a podcast is by giving the podcast that you like a star rating and review. So, John, as we're recording this, we've hit a momentous event, which is 15 years anniversary of the Clone Wars movie, which is crazy. Before we get launched into the big part of the discussion, I just wanted to kind of ask you, thinking all the way back to, the Clone Wars film and its release, did you have any inkling at that point that this was going to turn into something as big as it's become, to the point where we would be getting a show starring a character that people literally hated the moment she came on screen 15 years ago?
No, of course not. I don't think anybody expected this, except possibly George Lucas and Dave Filoni and crew, because you want to talk about people that always seem to be 5 steps ahead of where everybody else's head was at. Those are names I would drop. I think that the Clone Wars was oddly divisive when it came out, and then it came to be embraced and adored by fans, as it should have been. And no, I mean, I went into it, I was going out of a sense of obligation, if I recall correctly. As the years go by, it gets harder and harder to remember with accuracy. But of course, it's Star Wars. I'm going to go see it. This is, we'll see how this goes. And then I was pleasantly surprised by it. I think we've documented that on a commentary that we had in the past. I think you were in roughly the same place, right? Where it was like, how is there more Star Wars coming out? I thought this was sort of done with.
We've talked about this before, but I mean, just quickly for me, when this came out, I was very excited, in all honesty. I was working at Barnes & Noble at the time. We had a bunch of merch for it. We had the novelization by Karen Travers. We had other things and I just thought it looked cool. And I remember walking out of the theater feeling like I had just seen a new Star Wars movie, regardless of the fact that it was animated, and being very excited for the show then to launch on Cartoon Network. And I couldn't wait, to see what they're going to do next. Now, I can't lie to you and say, I knew that it was going to go the way it was going to go. in the sense that we would be here for, in a week's time, we're going to have the launch of the Ahsoka series. But I wasn't a hater of the character either, and to me, one of the beauties of Star Wars animation is that I already saw the way in which the world that George Lucas had created and the world that he had in his mind, there were basically no limits to what he could do. Even with all of the digital technology that he had with blue screens and all of that, there are still limitations as to what you can do. With animation, in all honesty, there really are very few limits. Now, I know that it costs money to create, these digital assets and everything that you use, but comparatively, it's nothing to what, you get on a big budget film. And so this seemed like almost like the perfect home for Star Wars in some ways, because George could then literally do what he wanted to do as well, which is control every single aspect of the animation, of the way the characters moved. Like, everything was under his control. And so to me, I think, I immediately saw the way in which animation was actually a perfect fit with Star Wars. And that's, I think, what excited me. I think the other thing that excited me personally, and I wanted to ask you about this, did you respond to the animation style and the artistic nature that they took, and almost the way in which this kind of referenced the British show, the Thunderbirds, and the way the characters looked? Did that bother you at all? Did you like it?
It didn't bother me. I thought it was interesting. I came to love it, I think, over the course of the first season. So I wasn't in love with it the first time I saw the film, but I thought it was artistic. What I appreciated about it from the start was that it looked like art. And as somebody who grew up reading comic books, I love a pretty picture. And if it's an interesting picture and it's prettily done, I'm all in. And you've got me hooked, and I will watch I will watch the story unfold, because it's just as much fun as anything else. In terms of freeing things up, what I would say to that is what I think we found over time, and I think what we're discovering here, is it's the oddest sort of thing sometimes where you can look at it, and the animation freed up the storytelling in the sense that nobody felt any restrictions in where they could go and how they could explore things. I've talked about this in other forums. Plenty of people have, not just me. I'm not being like, hey, look at me. I'm saying, like, plenty of people have pointed this out, where audiences are also more forgiving of animation in terms of acrobatic stuff that they're going to pull off, or zany antics or explosions. We'll go with it a little bit easier because it's a little nugget in the back of our brain that taps into watching cartoons growing up and saying, okay, I expect something slightly more fantastic than if I see a real person sitting in a thing.
Sure.
If I see a real person sitting in a thing, I'm putting different limits on what's happening right here. But in addition to that, and I would offer this to you, is that in terms of the way it freed them up storytelling-wise, I think that what it inadvertently, and I don't think this was the intent at all. I think everything you said is the intent. Like, you can control every aspect. You can really, really make it what you want it to be. You have absolute control. If it fails, okay, but at least you found out something new. If it's a success, that's great. And with the storytelling style, if there was an episode that people weren't nuts about, guess what? You could come back a couple of seasons later, tack on another episode that tied into it, and then all of a sudden that whole arc is better. But what it wound up doing, from my perspective, I want to get your thought on this, is it winds up being, and I think Ahsoka is extremely uniquely, oddly representative of this, is it's now wound up over the course of this 15 years being that best way to move the story forward without it being a Skywalker as the main character. This Ahsoka show coming up, this is the first time where everybody simply accepts, the fans of longstanding, simply accept that this character, who she is, where she's been, where we're going to go with her, this is not a novel character that comes out of left field. Might be to general audiences, but to us, we're buying in from the get-go. And we're on board with a new Star Wars arc that takes the story in a direction where a Skywalker is not the main character. And it's still regarded as, quote-unquote, the main storyline.
I do think that that's a good point, and I think part of that, of course, has to do with the fact that, everyone decried the fact that Anakin Skywalker had a Padawan, and we all knew that Anakin Skywalker didn't have a Padawan, so how dare they? George Lucas, you can't do that. And now, of course, we just all accept it and love it, and I think, as you mentioned, what it's done is it's created this connection to the Skywalker story without having to be the Skywalker story. And therefore, it has this intrinsic Star Wars-ness to it that we automatically, I think, accept and love and look forward to. And, I think, as you mentioned that, which I 100% agree with, one of the questions that I was thinking of, I was watching through the Clone Wars movie today. I was thinking about Star Wars animation in general. And, I had tweeted something the other day to the effect of that Star Wars animation has been the most consistently good Star Wars since it started.
Yes.
And I think my question then, when we're thinking back of 15 years, the Star Wars Clone Wars movie, which kicked all of this off, why is that? Because it's not just the Clone Wars, but we think of the fact that we also had Rebels, we have the Bad Batch, we had Tales of the Jedi, and of course the Ahsoka show is a combination of a continuation of the Clone Wars series as well as the Rebels series. And so what is it about Star Wars animation that has made it so consistently the best Star Wars we've been getting? I mean, we both loved Solo. You like Rogue One enough. I love Rogue One. So it's not as though we both have enjoyed The Mandalorian. So we're not saying there haven't been other good things, but consistently, pound for pound, nothing has compared to the greatness that Star Wars animation seems to continually give us week in and week out during these series.
Okay, I'll go ahead and say it. It's because of the wisdom initially of George Lucas, and obviously he's since retired and everything, in terms of the team that he assembled. The people that came together, the creatives that he got together to put these things together. This is what happens when you get a group of people who are genuinely invested and motivated and care about what they are creating. This isn't just with animation for this time, you never got the feeling that it was just a job for anyone. You got the feeling that this was a group of people coming together to tell a story, the same way you did when Lucas made his movies. And yes, Lucas's name always drew the most attention, like bugs to a bug zapper. The press all gathered around Lucas, but he very wisely chose the right creatives to be with him every step of the way, so that when the time came, those creatives could carry it forward. And I think the important inflection point here is what we are seeing happen, and it's been gradual. Ahsoka is the watershed moment as a series, but it's been happening in little bits and pieces along the way. What we are seeing go is this idea that a good story idea is a good story idea regardless of the medium it's told in. Disney has done a lot of damage to the idea of animation as a storytelling tool over the years. Let's just be honest.
Yes.
They've done this damage because they didn't want competition. And I feel blessed to have grown up in an era when Ralph Bakshi was working, when insane, crazy, mildly offensive animation like Heavy Metal came out, when Akira broke on the scene, when Robotech really like captured the imagination of a bunch of kids and turned us into anime fans, by watching it on UHF and stuff like that. When story was really running deep. And what I see with Star Wars animation is that same tradition of not saying I'm making a cartoon, but I'm telling a story and this is just the medium I'm telling it in. It's just like when a truly gifted writer sits down, Frank Miller creates The Dark Knight Returns, or they create Superman Red Sun, or they create Kingdom Come. Does it matter that those are graphic novels / comic books? Not one bit. What matters is the story was interesting, and that just happened to be the medium that Watchmen was written in, or League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. And the storyteller said, I'm going to make this medium work. That's what's happened with Star Wars animation. 100%.
I think that you really have hit on something there because, in rewatching the Clone Wars film, I was really struck by the way in which George Lucas, and even though the prequels, everybody's like, oh, they're made for kids, and that at the same time, he pulls no punches. You have the movie starts with, the chatter of the clones. There's not even any picture yet. It's just the chatter of clones during wartime. You have all of these scenes where clones are being shot down, and then of course, the hard part about that is that we're going to get to know them as we move forward. So it's going to be more and more difficult to watch us lose them. And so I think the brilliance here is that, like you said, Lucas never approached this as if animation was a different medium, really. He approached this as if he's just continuing to tell Star Wars stories, the way that Star Wars stories have always been told, regardless of the medium that they're in. This is what makes good Star Wars stories, is you don't try to dumb down or change the type of story you're telling. You just tell a Star Wars story. And I think you're absolutely right when you talk about the fact that he then chose people to be on the team who understood that that's what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. But another interesting thing I want to throw out there is the Clone Wars movie comes out. Obviously, it's setting the stage for the show. But there are people that you and I both know that we talk to, and their whole attitude is, oh, I want to break Star Wars. I want to see what I can do to subvert what people expect Star Wars to be. And you mentioned the opening of the film. It opens like no other Star Wars movie. Chatter of the Clones, different approach to the opening. It's completely different, but right at the same time. And also, what I want to throw out there is we might be throwing love on Ahsoka, and Ahsoka's our breakthrough character. We're bringing Hera over and everything like that. Can you imagine a world without Captain Rex?
That's the beauty of animation, is that, it not only opened up the opportunity for us to have new characters, of course, Ahsoka, Rex, all of these type of characters, right? But it allowed us to then even fall in love with characters that we already did know even more. I mean, I think, my wife became a massive fan of Anakin Skywalker in the Clone Wars series because of the opportunity to be able to spend more time with him. I think there are other characters I think of in animation that you barely saw on screen now are some of my favorite characters of all time, like Yaddle, because of the Tales of the Jedi. You mentioned, Rex, how pivotal he is to the show. You think of the opportunity to learn more about, and we've talked about many times, Qui-Gon Jinn and his journey, and that, Yoda, Dooku. I mean, the end of the list is endless. And then, like you said, it's not just the new characters like Ahsoka or Rex, but You had then Rebels come in and create a whole family you felt in love with, with Kanan and Hera, Ezra and Sabine, Zeb, Chopper, and then, of course, the Bad Batch has come along, and we've got all of those characters that we all love, right? And so I think that the brilliance of animation, again, and I think you just pinpointed this so well, is that it's mimicked Star Wars in the perfect way, in the sense that it's given us these characters that we are able to latch on to, but then it continues to deepen our relationship with those characters through every episode. So we just care more and more about them, So we've done that with characters like Anakin and Obi-Wan in the Clone Wars, but we did that with brand new characters we had never met before, like Hera and Kanan, which is, I think one of the reasons actually that The Mandalorian itself became successful, because I think it actually mimicked the way in which good Star Wars storytelling is done, that had been done in the Clone Wars and the rest of the animated series. It mimicked that very closely, and that's why we fell in love with those characters. So to me, the reason these shows are so successful and continue to be the pinnacle of Star Wars these days consistently is because they have found a way to tell Star Wars stories week in and week out. It's that simple.
In the tradition of the serials that inspired George Lucas to begin with. Short stories, quickly told, efficiently constructed, and you can have arcs, but you never give the audience a chance to get fidgety or restless. I think it's a recognition. I think if anything, it embraces the fact that audiences are inherently impatient. And I'm not saying that as a knock, and I'm not saying that there's any problem with the show or anything like that. I think that what it unlocks here is, especially in the era of electronic devices and how quickly we consume information now, it doesn't try to keep people rooted to the way it was done before.
Right.
At the same time, it shows, in a sense, how as things progress, it truly does refresh itself, and we wind up just back to the old serials that started the whole thing to begin with. So as we go into this new territory with animation, it's embracing the very thing that would be considered out of date. And we find out that it's just that audiences go through cycles of how they want to consume things. And Star Wars animation embraces that and preps us to move us along, so that we're not expecting Ahsoka's story to be resolved in 2 hours. We spend a lifetime with her.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, in some ways, I think that the truth of that is that, Star Wars, and I think this is where the animated series really got this. And really what it came down to is that the people behind the animated series really understood this, is Star Wars is one continuous whole. And every part of Star Wars is building into that whole, wherever it is. And so you have to find a way, when you're telling that story, to tell the story you're telling to the best of your ability and to do it really well. But that there is then relevance to the rest of the saga, because it's all connected, right? And Star Wars is one of those universes which, when you forget that things are very connected, because this is a story about all these families, right? And it's not just the Skywalker family, but it's the Jedi family. It's the family that we have on the Ghost. It's the characters that we meet in Andor. It's the family we've created in The Mandalorian. It's all of these families, and it's this sense that the galaxy itself is made up of these pockets of families, and it's how those stories all interact that create this larger whole. And I think that there's something so beautiful about that. And then when you don't deny that, that's what helps create really good Star Wars storytelling. And I would say, not to knock anything specifically, but where Star Wars storytelling in the last, maybe 10 years might not have lived up to what we had hoped is usually because it's failed recognition of the fact that it's part of a larger whole.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very fair comment. And I think we've definitely tipped our hand that we're both very much looking forward to the Ahsoka series. I know that this is unquestionably the most excited going into a Star Wars project that I've been since the Bad Batch premiere. So I'm really looking forward to it. I know you're looking forward to it, but I know really, truly what you are supremely looking forward to, and that's people reaching out to you online. So where can they find you out there?
Well, I am absolutely looking forward to that, and I hope they will do that. They can find me all over social media under the name MattRushing02. Here on the network, I do have a show that's completed called Owl Post. I did that with Drea Kaufman, and we talked about every single chapter of the Harry Potter series, one chapter at a time. You can also find me over on the TFM network talking about a bunch of different things. The best place to find me over there is the 602 Club, talking about all of the fandoms that we love. John's a frequent guest over there. It really is a blast, so please do check that out. You can also find me doing The Orb, Warp 5, Literary Treks, Saddle Up, and The Artificial Tango over there. But John, when you're not just trying to find the best place to buy some Corellian whiskey here on Teth, where can people find you?
Well, gosh, you can find me out there as Kessel Junkie. And if you don't want to find me out there as Kessel Junkie, I won't take it personally. You can also find me here on the network co-hosting a show called House Lights with Darren Moser and Tristan Riddell, where this is going to blow your mind. We talk about movies. I know, this is an innovative idea for podcast.
What?
I know, it's never been done before. I know, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Y'all are like the only ones.
I know. We're like the best kept secret out there. I don't know why nobody else does it. It's nuts. But hey, we have fun. We hope you'll have fun too with us. But in all honesty, I got to go get my Admiral Thrawn fan club jacket on so that did I just tip my hand as to who I'm really cheering for in Ahsoka? I think it's time to close these negotiations.
John, negotiations are closed.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.